Hey folks, in the previous session what we have done is we have performed or we have find out the first partial ratio value with respect to our question 1 and question 2. That's what we have typically done in the previous session. Again, with respect to first partial ratio value, we have learned that as long as match is partial, we might end up getting a higher first partial ratio value. But imagine there is a scenario. Let's say I have a string 1 as, let's say there is a cricket match between India and New Zealand. So I can say as India versus New Zealand. Similarly, I can also say as New Zealand versus India. But the moment I will use this fuzz or the partial fuzz ratio on top of both the string that we have, we might end up getting a low value, because as there is no partial match, along with we have to do lot of edit just to obtain this S2 from S1. Hence we will end up getting the low value. Similarly, with respect to the partial fuzz ratio value, as there is no partial string or as there is very few partial string, hence we will also end up getting a low partial fuzz ratio value. That's a drawback of this partial fuzz ratio value. Again, that's where our third metric, which is all about our token short ratio, comes into existence. So the core idea behind our token short ratio is, the core idea behind this metric is, it says, hey, let's say you have a string, let's say S1 and S2. So it says, hey, just break this string into tokens, just break it into some tokens, then short all the tokens, and then take a fuzz ratio. Between both the shorted tokens or both the shorted strings that we have. That's a core idea behind our token short ratio. So the moment I say, hey, can I tokenize it? So after tokenizing, we might end up getting India as one token, VS or versus as second token. The third token might be NZ, which is all about New Zealand. Now let's try to short it. I will say, let's follow the alphabetical sorting order. So first and foremost, this India will come into picture. So I will say it is all about India. Then here comes something known as New Zealand. Then here comes something known as VS. Similarly, if I will short it, or if I will tokenize, then short and all that stuff, we will also end up getting the similar stuff. And the moment I will say, just call a fuzz ratio, just compute the fuzz ratio value of this, we might end up getting 100 value. That's the power of the token short ratio. So let's try to code up all the stuffs. The moment I say it is all about, let me remove this one. I will say, let's press tab. This is the function, which is all about token underscore sort underscore ratio. The moment I will execute this line of code, you will end up getting 93 as a token sort ratio value. And the moment I say, let me cross check. The moment I say the first string is all about, let's say India versus New Zealand. This is the first string. The second is all about, let's say New Zealand versus, let's say India. And the moment I will execute this line of code, you will end up getting 100 as a value, which typically says both the strings are pretty much similar. Just on account of the metric that we are using, which is all about token short ratio, we will end up getting a higher value. Now let's try to use something known as partial. So I will say it is all about partial ratio. I will say it is all about partial underscore ratio. Let me execute. Now you will end up getting a lower value. That's where your fuzz partial ratio, even fuzz ratio, fails. So now let's try to define a function just for this token underscore short underscore ratio. Let's try to paste all the code. Now let's try to modify it. I will say function is all about this one. This is the function. Cool. All the stuffs are okay. The moment I will execute this line of code, and the moment I say this time, let's try to rename the function name. I will say function name is all about, let's say, fuzz underscore or token underscore sort underscore ratio. I will say token underscore sort underscore ratio. Cool. Let me execute this line of code. Now what I will do is, let's try to apply this function which is all about token underscore sort underscore ratio. This is a function name which is all about this. Let's try to store this in a feature which is all about our token underscore sort underscore ratio. I will say sort underscore ratio. Let's try to make it as a uppercase. Cool. Now the moment I will execute this line of code, and if I will say df of head, let's pass a random value, let's say 7. And the moment I will execute this line of code, let me scroll it to right. Now you will see here you have a value which is all about token underscore sort ratio. And here you will end up getting all these different values. Look at the value that we are getting over here. But again, token sort ratio has its own drawback. Imagine I have two strings. Let's say I have a string, let's say string 1 something else, let's say string 2 something else. Let's say string 1 is all about, let's say my name is Sean. Imagine I have a string 1 in which is all about my name is Sean. Similarly, I have a string 2 which is all about, let's say Sean is my name. Sean is my name. Imagine this is the second string that we have. And if I will use, again, from the human perspective, we are able to figure out that they are pretty much similar. But even if we will use all the metrics that we have discussed so far, we might end up getting a low value. That's where you have to use some better metric. Again, in the upcoming session, we will try to touch upon the next metric, which is all about our token set ratio, which is of course the last metric. Just to find how similar, again, there are tons of metric, but as in this use case, we will try to focus primarily on 4 to 5 metric just to figure out how similar two strings are. So this metric says, along with the token, you have to also create some set. This is typically its high level overview. Again, in the next session, we will try to touch upon what this metric is all about and how exactly it works under the hood. So that's all about it. Again, for those of you who have any doubt with respect to all the metrics that we have discussed, please feel free to share with your doubts, your error. If you are getting in the code, whatever we have shared, feel free to ask with us in the Q&A of the course. That's all about it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Keep learning, keep growing, keep practicing.